Greetings and welcome to the Pan-African Congress Movement Umoja session. And these are the weekly sessions put on by the Pan-African Congress Movement via PACMTV. And they are part of an outreach program, we can say, that the endeavor of which is to connect with our communities worldwide. Now, this week, the topic is based around identity. If anybody was watching the past two sessions, they can see how it built up to this moment. And basically, we are looking at the question of, are we Africans? Are we Blacks? Or are we something else? Because identity is one of those thorny issues. But as usual, before we go into the session, I would like to invite Brother Imani, who will be starting the meeting by changing the energy for us.
Asante sana ndugu Tahaka and hamjambo jamaa shikamo mzee Pepaka shikamo mzee Cecil jambo Baba Mandingo. Good to see you. Good to see you. Ndugu just means in Kiswahili means brother, and Mzee means elder. So that's what I'm saying. And Jamaa just means kindred. So we're going to start on the ritual that we've created for our meetings in virtual space, as we can't be together as we would like, and pour libation or tambiko in Kiswahili. So we created this ritual so that we can pour our energy out and change the energy wherever we may be in the world, because we are part of the universal consciousness, and in all truthfulness, we are not just bounded by this. We are bounded by spirit, and so we change the energy so that we are in one accord with each other, even if we are not in the same able to be in the same presence with each other. So I am going to share my screen, and the Gutaka will allow you to see it.
Okay.
Okay. Is that able to be seen in Dukataka?
Yes, you should be able to see it now. It's up.
Okay, wonderful. Right. So, mabadiliko ya nishati, change of energy in Kiswahili. Everything that you'll see will be in either Kiswahili or will be referring to Kemetic terms, particularly for the principles and powers in Kemetic terms. This is an African spiritual ritual. And as part of African spirituality, it's not about coercion. So there's no need for anybody to feel that they must take part in this. But if they wish to, please do follow along. And if they just want to listen and watch, then that's absolutely fine. But it's a respectful ritual that we're doing to honoring our culture, honoring our concepts of the creator and all existence. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to breathe. We don't breathe properly. We breathe in our chest up here, and that leads us to be emotional and reactive and animalistic, right where our enemies want us to be. And we want to breathe more deeply and more clearly, so we are calm and that we are in one with our spirit, because our breath is that link between our breath and our physical essence and our spiritual essence. So we're going to breathe together. And I'll direct you to do that, and I'll count in Kiswahili. So what we're going to do, if you wish to take part, if you would, please sit straight in whatever seat you're in, so that your spine is straight, feet flat on the floor. So if your spine is straight, then your 7 energy centers in your body are in line, and they're known in other traditions outside of us called chakras, but they're the energy centers. So when we breathe out, we're going to pull the stomach in and force the air out of our mouth. and then we're going to relax the stomach, and that will force and that will bring the air into our lungs through our noses. Okay, and you'll feel the difference if you've never done this before. How different this is to your normal state of breathing. This is the kind of breath that we should be taking all the time, not just when we are going into a meditative state. Okay, so I'm going to begin. So hands on thighs, back straight, feet flat on the floor. And again, if we breathe out, hold it, relax, breathe in, moja. Breathe out, relax, and breathe in, and breathe in. Again, breathe out, relax, and breathe in. Ne. And Tana, and Ine, breathe out. And relax and breathe in. Great. And we used it 4 times because 4 is the spiritual number for abundance and for foundation and growth and health. Particularly in these times, that is particularly important for us. So, Mabadiliko Yanishati. To change the energy or vibration, we now thank the powers to ask that we have a closer connection with them and that they assist us in manifesting our objectives. And in order to do that, they'll change that vibration, because all things are vibration. The creator is a vibration. His mental thought is a vibration that creates all things, including us. We are aspects of that creator. We now going to ring this chime. This is the triangle chime 7 times. 7 is the spiritual number for wisdom, seeking, and truth, and intuition. And it's a number that we can see throughout existence. 7 energy centers, as I've mentioned before. 7 layers of the skin. 7 entry points to the body. 7 musical notes in the scale. Major musical notes. 7 colors in the spectrum, and so on and so forth. Particularly powerful number. So we're going to ring it 7 times. Continue to close eyes, breathe deeply, and allow the vibration to go around you, over you, and through you, thereby bringing you into accord with the vibration wherever you are, changing that vibration there, thereby opening your consciousness to universal consciousness. And by that, we join with each other wherever we are and be in one accord. So I'll begin. Moja. Mbili. Tatu. Nne. Tana. Sita. Saba. Okay, now we can open our eyes, and I'll continue. Come to the call and response part of the ritual, and what we're going to say together is we are one, or we are the same thing, but in Kiswahili. So we say sisi ni kitu kimoja. Okay, I'll begin up here. The first thing that we call upon is the first ancestor, the all, the creator. Ninaomba ya muumba awote. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba ya nebacha. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya mami water. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya shu. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya tefnut. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya nut. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba, and now we go on to the partner through, or the aspects of the creator, the kinetic tree of life, which you can see in its entirety over here. We go from the lowest vibration to the highest vibration, starting at number 10, Geb. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Geb. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Alset. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Sebek. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Heteru. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Haru. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Herakuti. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Beautiful. Ninaomba, oops, no, Herakuti. Yes, that's right. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Maat. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Zaka. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Tahuti. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Al-Star. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Wonderful. Ninaomba kanuni na nguvu ya Amen. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. So now we've gone through up to the highest vibration. We go to the ancestors. And first of all, the ancestors we call upon are those in our direct bloodline. So I'll begin. Nina Amba Ketera Reed. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Elders, if there's anybody we wish to call upon, please do.
Nyamba, Grandfather James, Grandmother Daisy.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Nyamba, Grandmother Louise Hines, Grandfather Sylvester Rattigan.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Anybody else wish to call upon a direct bloodline? No? Okay.
Numbo, my grandfather.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Auntie Sana, Baba. And anyone else called upon a direct bloodline, or I'll move on? Okay, I'll move on. So now we can call upon those ancestors who are not in our direct bloodline, but who've given their lives, their energy, their time, their effort for the liberation of our families, our communities, our nations, and our race. Ninaomba Enze the Honorable Marcus Mazar Garvey. Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba Sheikh Amadou Bamba.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Anyone else? Let's call upon them. Okay. Ninaomba wazee Amy Ashford Garvey na Amy Jacques Garvey.
Sisi
ni kitu kimoja.
Niliomba Harriet Tubman.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba Kwame Ture.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba Malcolm X Omowale, the shining has returned.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba go ahead.
Ninaomba Queen Lehanda.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba Baba Fred Hampton na Baba Huey P. Newton.
Sisi ni
kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba Queen Mother Nana of Jamaica.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba
Queen Mother Sojourner Truth.
Sisi
ni kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba Francis Chris Wilson.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba
Desali.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Kimoja. Okay. All right. Ninaomba MJ Chancellor Williams.
Sisi ni
kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba Dr. Joseph Benyo Channon.
Sisi
ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba MJ Nanabotu na Baba Berenge na Baba Tidel. Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Sisi mi to over to One Martin.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Okay. All right. And now we can go on to the ancestors who we don't always know their names, but who left us a tremendous legacy. And those that we should never forget, those who are always looking for us to call upon them or their assistance. Those of the Mangamazi. Ninaomba mababu ya Mangamazi. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Gulabita, those who fought in the Gula Wars. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Asian Revolution. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Freedom and Land Party na SWAPO na APLA. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya Kemet na Taseti na Kush na Nubia. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninaomba mababu ya San na Twa na Hutu. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. Ninawaomba wananchi ambao watatetea sisi na wale mababu ambao bado hawajazaliwa. Sisi ni kitu kimoja. And we end on the words of power and the affirmation, our intent, and you can just repeat after me. Ndugu zote,
Ndugu zote,
zote
kwa watu wetu,
kwa watu wetu,
na mapenzi ya wote,
na mapenzi ya wote,
ni mapenzi yetu.
ni mapenzi yetu.
yetu.
Okay. Sawa. Okay. Asanteni sana, MJ, wazee, and baba. And asanteni sana, jamaa.
Okay.
Asante sana.
Okay. Asante sana and do great morning for that.
Okay.
Now, yes. Hold on, I'm getting quite a bit of background noise for some reason. Okay. All right.
I will join you at the end. Wazee,
Yeah.
and then do
Okay, then. That's fine. Right. Okay, so just before we begin the actual discussion, what I'd like to do now is go around in turn for each of the panelists to do a quick introduction of themselves. So I'll start with Elder Cecil. Hello.
It says you're smiling, but we can't hear you.
Can't hear you, not coming through.
That's true.
Oh.
Okay, you will now.
All right.
Sorry. All right. So let me say again, greetings to you all and to any viewers that we might have out there. What can I say about myself? That I'm very much retired, ex-academic, but still intellectually involved, politically involved. I'm an ex-community worker, trying to remain as active as I can and fully committed to our people's interests.
Okay. And I'll pass now on to Elder Peppercorn.
I didn't know you was retired community worker, but as far as I know, you're still working.
No, I meant I was referring not to the stuff that I do voluntarily, but to the time when I was actually being paid after a fashion.
Work is work.
The time in the grove.
Pepukai, one of the founder members of the Pan-African Congress movement, community activist for some time. And as long as I'm on my feet, I intend to be active.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Mandingo.
Mandingo, Pan-Africanist from the 1960s in Jamaica, from school days, a member of the African Nationalist Union and also the UNIACL. And ever since then, always been a Pan-Africanist, working in all spheres regarding African people's progress and benefit.
Okay, thanks. So now we can go into discussion, and as you can see, the title for today is all based around identity. And yeah, so we're looking at identity, and we're looking at asking the question, what are we? Are we Africans? Are we blacks? Or are we something else? The reason I'm saying that because we are constantly being addressed by so many different labels. Plus, many within our communities refer to themselves by so many different labels. So we're here today to try and navigate through all this and see if we can come up with one identity that would be able to, we can all embrace willingly. So, okay, so I'll now turn to, let me start with Elder Cecil. and see what he has to say on the topic.
Thank
Because
you.
remember, just to say to people, this has come out of 2 weeks ago. We looked at the US elections and the implications on Africa and the Caribbean. And then that led to us looking last week, basically at, looking in a small way at identity and what it's all about, because we had the situation during the American election of people like ADOS coming to the fore, and now foundational African Americans coming to the fore. And now that has brought to light a situation, say, within the United States, and we know it happens other places as well, where the African community, because I'm on a PACM platform and PACM holds to the term African. So for me, it's easy to say we are all African. And I'm sure that will go for the same, that also goes for the other members of the panelists. But remember, we are not talking to ourselves. Otherwise, the exercise would be a waste of time, because more or less we'll be all in agreement. We are trying to reach out to the masses out there who do not see our line or our point of view, in an attempt to convince them in terms of why it's so important to have an identity that has a sense of meaning. So that's basically how we came to this point. So now I'll hand you back to Elder Cecil.
Thank you, my brother. I almost joked that I feel a little bit picked on because you were starting with me, but I will leave that to one side. I want to say that in fact it's necessary to take the continuity back just to one more session, because a session before the last one you mentioned, my brother, I was actually talking about the fundamental importance of race and of what the white world has tried to do to race since the Second World War. I tried to draw attention, I think it's very important, to the fact that in their pretend embarrassment about what they had done to the Jews before and during the Second World War, that instead of admitting the fundamentally dangerous, destructive, genocidal racism that was characteristic of them internally and externally, they got out of it, or sought to get out of it, by saying that the Nazis were an aberration, hardly anything to do with them, and that the problem had really been caused by race, which they called man's most dangerous myth. And then they set out to organize a systematic attack on the notion and reality of race, using, and I pointed out that UNESCO had been their key instrument in, this is I have in my hand one of the publications from UNESCO called Race and Science. And they used UNESCO to say that race had no proper scientific existence, and that it was a mythical, at best, a social construct, and that we needed to put race behind us. That would have been all well and good, but for the fact that everything the white world did in the period since the war, since the Second World War, since their second great civil war, and it wouldn't have been the second, because Europe had been characterized as civil war in which vast proportions of their population died internally. We leave that also to one side. What matters is that they intended to continue on the basis of their racial interest, which is tied up with capitalism and imperialism, to continue to exploit the rest of the world on a racial basis. They pretended to be giving up their colonies, when in fact they were instituting neocolonialism, and they only pretended to be giving up those that they could give up without, in their mind, losing anything by directly instituting some kind of neocolonialism. And they set about destabilizing or even killing the leaders who they perceived to be in disagreement with them or acting against their interest. And they forced us Africans to fight them for our formal flag freedom in the places where they were settled in numbers, the settler colonies, and also in places that they thought that they couldn't give up because they contained too many resources. And so we were forced into wars of national liberation. Those didn't only happen in Africa, they also happened in Vietnam. There, the French tried to hold on to a place that clearly wasn't theirs. They got defeated. And instead of the Europeans realizing that they couldn't win a war, a land war in Asia, the Americans took it on and were defeated before our very eyes in the middle of the 1970s. So a key point, and it's relevant in terms of this issue that we're discussing today, is that I hold, as does everybody on this platform today, to a commitment to our African nature, and that natural state, racial state, has, in my view, a scientific basis. That is to say, race is not some kind of accident. It's not some kind of myth, although the white world used it in extremely backward, destructive ways. They set up hierarchies, put themselves at the top, and put Africans or somebody else at the bottom, with some kind of hierarchy in between. And in other words, they used race in a racist way to suit themselves. So the fact that it can be used in racist ways doesn't mean that it's not a reality. And so me as an African, regard myself as, in making that declaration, standing on two foundations. A foundation which is biogenetic, biological, in which not that I am not 90% similar to every other human being genetically, but that somewhere between 5 and 10% of me as an African is different from those others, and that is biogenetically defined. And the elements of it and the manifestations of it, and they are fundamental to our physical structure, includes skin color, hair type, facial features, and a range of about 5 or 6 other distinctive features. Now, the fact that we're only talking about less than 5% of our physical reality doesn't mean that it's not important. It manifestly is important. And it's particularly important because it functions to define, for example, who can be an African. White people from Europe cannot be Africans, no matter how long they lived there. And it matters that we know and don't surrender on that, because in the southern part of our continent right now, there are whites who are saying that they're African because they were born there, they ripped us off there, they've been there for a generation or 2 or even 10, and on that basis they say they're African. All they are is possibly citizens of the particular countries in which they are, but they are not African, because African the notion African starts from origination in that continent, and also from the biogenetic physicality of being what is called Black. Now, it arose during our last discussion on this forum that our brother, who will no doubt speak to this later, our brother Mandingo, said that there are no Black and no white people. And then I heard him say that strictly, if you are taking Black like out of in a crayon pack, then there are no Black people. And similarly, he said, and this is true, that there are no white people. So clearly, the notions black or yellow or brown, when we're talking about humankind, is not about the physical color black. It's about how biogenetically we come to be defined in nature in terms of a range of shades of blackness. And it's one of the distinctions between us and other people, and especially the white Europeans. And I am not about to surrender the biological reality of that to anybody. And certainly I was never impressed by the UNESCO stuff, and all of the white professors and some black people never accepted that for a moment. So you, our brother chair, said in introducing the discussion that are we African or are we black? Or are we some other possibly hyphenated thing? Manifestly, we are African. Part of the definition of African is blackness in a variety of shades that have developed on that continent, and that in moving out of that continent into forced miscegenation with others, more of us are brown than used to be. But and that is the only thing that changes our physical appearance: miscegenation, race mixing. Otherwise, there are some genetic accidents that also change our color, but it's very, very small number of people, excepting, as happened in the ice ages a long time ago, when small numbers of people like us starting off got trapped in the ice of Europe, and we won't go into that, and changed in a whole set of ways. So us Africans are also black, and that is a fundamental part of who we are. So I have no objection. Do not see it as demeaning. Do not see it as wrong to refer to ourselves as black or to be referred to as black, providing the person doing it isn't using it in an imagined demeaning way or an intended demeaning way. Now, so our physicality, the skin color, the hair type, and all of that stuff, which distinguishes us from other people's, matters. And it is wrong and dangerous for us to abandon it, because in doing so, we enable others to claim African citizenship and African reality, which they have no entitlement to and can never do, no matter how long they are in Africa. Now, in addition to claiming that biogenetic racial reality and defending it against the idiocy and wickedness of the white world, particularly, well, the white world has always been wicked, but the wickedness of denying the reality of race since the Second World War. In addition to defending that, what do us Africans have to claim? I remember reading a book some time ago. I think it was called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectuals by somebody called Harold Cruz. It's a tricky book, but actually a very good one, because what he's looking at in that book is kind of the conflict between Black race nationalism, African race nationalism in the United States of America, and all of the sources of attack upon that Africans in the United States have endured in the 20th and now into the 21st century. And in that book, almost as a throwaway line, Cruz says that the African in the United States was the underblooded people who had any culture to defend. And there we were, casually abandoning it and allowing others to misdirect us in relation to it, and misdirecting ourselves in relation to it. So Cruz was right. Our Africanness, in addition to being a very powerful biological reality, which if you go back into ancient Europe, go back to the ancient Greece, they recognize our black beauty. And they talk about the beauty of the ancient Ethiopians and the ancient Kemites and so on. It was an inescapable fact of our reality for the ancient Europeans. So that's just part of the story. What I want to say is that in addition to our biogenetic reality, part of which, a crucial part of which, is our blackness in all of the shades that have been produced in the continent of Africa and elsewhere, we also have this grand cultural heritage. And it is important that we understand as the essence is of that cultural heritage, which we must understand and defend and know and learn and be as proud of as any other people. So any half-ignorant Indian or any ignorant Chinese or any half-ignorant European knows that they have Shakespeare, knows that they have some stuff that happened in ancient India, knows that they have some stuff in ancient China, and they are proud of it and they use it to define themselves. One of the things that has happened is that us Africans have had our grandest cultural achievements separated from us by a variety of means of theft and lies, which the Europeans have perpetrated. And we've had to rediscover, relink with our cultural achievement and our cultural heritage. It is indeed grand. It is at least as grand as anybody else and possibly manifestly greater than all other people, because we, in that heritage, invented human civilization. All of the things that we now talk about as human civilization, city life, sophisticated religion, sophisticated science, sophisticated all of those other technologies, sophisticated archaeologies, architecture and so on, and medicine, and I could go on till all evening, is invented by us in the Nile Valley or in other places where, because of our ignorance, we don't understand that we were doing it, but we were doing it. So all of that achievement on continental Africa, Nile Valley and everywhere else on the continent of Africa, and then also outside of the continent of Africa to an extraordinary extent. So the civilization that the Indians are so proud of, we are the ones who made it before some whites who call themselves Indo-Europeans marched into our ancient civilization in places like Harappa and other places in Indus Valley and ancient India more generally, and conquered some of us and imposed upon us a racial hierarchized Hinduism, which set whiteness at the top and then had a hierarchy with blackness right at the bottom, and it still operates in Indian society. When Nehru died, the man who should have succeeded him was somebody called Jagjeevan Ram, who's blacker than me, and they wouldn't let him. They put in somebody called Shastri instead. It's a very absolutely racist place, but we Africans were the founders of that civilization, and I collect this kind of stuff for that reason. If you look at, for example, the book Frontiers of the Indus Civilization, or the Harappan civilization, or whatever, it's fundamentally, the further back you go, about us Africans and what we did in that place. And if you go further east in Southeast Asia, places like Cambodia and all of those places, the foundational cultures are us, Khmer, and so on. Even China. And importantly, no matter how far north and into Central Asia you go, you find a whole heap of evidence in places like Afghanistan of our African presence. And then you go across the Atlantic to ancient Mexico, and you find the Olmec, and the foundation of the greatest first civilization in Mesoamerica. Our presence is there in a dominant kind of a way. And even in the Caribbean, where we got told, and there is some truth in it, that the people who Columbus found there were, they used to call them in our childhood days, Arawaks and Caribs and so on. There's more sophisticated modern names there. Amongst those people were a whole heap of us. And the more you dig into the artifacts of the region, the more you see the truth of that. So the culture, or rather cultural identity, upon which we should rely and build and be massively proud, is African. Our brother Mandingo correctly reminded us that Peter Tosh has a wonderful song no matter where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. And that black aspect of African matters. That's actually the foundational essence, if you will, of Tosh's song. It's as long as you're a black man, you're an African. And we Africans, therefore, shouldn't be fighting down blackness or the black designation, because it's an essential, fundamental part of us at the biogenetic level. And what we have done on it, on the basis of that, what we've done culturally, surpasses every other people's in the world. And we need to know and acknowledge that. And it's not about black superiority. About 3 programs ago, somebody said he rejects the notion of black superiority because in the coronation of His Imperial Majesty, some white rulers from Europe came and bowed down to him, and that was evidence of black supremacy. I don't go down that line at all, although I know what he's talking about. But fundamentally, in terms of the essential reality of human cultural achievement, we African people are at the center of that in all our glorious blackness. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I don't know if we can bring Brother Mandingo in now.
Yes. I repeat last week what I said and what I've said from the 1960s. I am an African. I don't ask what is my identity. My identity is no other term other than I am an African. And I repeat again, no one is literally black or white in color. And I'll add, or yellow in color. Being African, as Peter Tosh song, as I think, his reference was because, and Peter Tosh is somebody who I knew personally, as I knew Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer also, and many others, is that you have a lot of people who have been mentally enslaved to hate their identity as Africans, and who will say that they are black, but they are not African, and operate in a racist way towards Africans born on the continent. And they adamantly say, yes, I am black, but I am not African. I am an African. And black is and white. No one is black or white. What happens with the African race is we have different shades of darkness. Darkness is not literally black. And I'm saying that scientifically, and I'm not colorblind. Okay, so I am African, and what is most important with Marcus Garvey and others is that when you start having more than one term to define us, it sows division and doubt and confusion in the minds of most of our people who we are trying to get on board for us to unify. One term, African. Once you start using other terms, it's a recipe for sowing doubt, confusion, and division. Black, as I also said, symbolizes, and a symbol is different from something that is literal. Black symbolizes in the red, black, and green flag of the African race that Marcus Garvey and others came up with in 1920. Symbolizes the race, but not literally. And we are different shades of darkness. And the most unique thing about us as Africans is not even our variety of dark shades. The most unique thing about Africans is our hair. No other race of people have that woolly type of hair like us. The others have this straight, lank hair. So the most distinctive thing about us in terms of phenotype is the hair that we have. The so-called hair that the racists call bad hair, not good hair. And which is why a lot of our people either use to conk their hair or wear other people's wigs or use ironing combs to get the kinks out of their hair. But as Marcus Garvey said, get the kinks out of your minds and not out of your hair. And Marcus Garvey is totally right where that is concerned. And Marcus Garvey Jr., his son, my political leader of the African Nationalist Union in Jamaica in the 1960s, and also as 7th President General of the UNIA and ACL in 1992, summarized that the first thing and the most important thing is identity, because as was inscribed in the temples in Kemet, misnamed Egypt, man or woman, know thyself. That's an African saying. And if you don't know yourself, you will always be defeated by your enemies who know themselves. The Chinese know that they are Chinese and are proud of it. The Indians know that they are Indians and are proud of it. You have Indians who are very, very dark, darker than many other Africans, but they are not Africans. They are Indians. As I said, that distinction, unique distinction of our hair. So, whilst black, and black incidentally happens to be my favorite color. My second favorite color is navy blue, right? Let me just say that I am an African, period. That's my African identity. And this has nothing to do with putting down the color black per se, but merely stating the obvious physical fact, scientific fact, that no one is literally white or black, and as I said, by extension, yellow in complexion. I am an African, and that is it, you know, because anything else is inviting confusion and discord. And it's all well and good to be saying that other terms are being mentioned, hyphenated terms and so and so. But that in itself is an invitation which sows confusion and doubt in the minds of many of our people who are seeking to know who they are, to come home to the realization of their African identity. When I was asked what should be the title, what was my idea for the title of today's discussion, my suggestion that I sent to Tahaka was African identity and Ujamaa. So in other words, we're talking about African people knowing and practicing Ujamaa, which is an everyday and every night theory and practice for Africans wherever we are. And I, in this part of my talk, by saying I am an African, full stop.
Okay, so now I'd like to bring in Elder Pepperkai.
My brother Tahaka, you hearing me? There's some kind of an echo on your thing. See if you can sort that out, brother Pepperkai.
Last week discussion, when we decided to have this one, I volunteered to go first. And Brother Taka brought in Brother Cecil and brought in Brother Mandingo. And I'm not in any way disappointed because Brother Cecil did an excellent job in giving that historical context to what we're talking about. Now, when I left the discussion last week, I asked myself the question, how did we get to be debating our identity? And it's because we haven't fully accept who we are. And that is why it is still up for discussion. Because for close on 2,000 years, we the African have been under siege. We've been under attack from various people who covet our wealth and want it for nothing. And because we haven't defended ourselves enough, we have been invaded, conquered, enslaved, and colonized. And that is why today we are having a discussion such as this. No people can stand firm in their conviction without standing first on the leg of who am I? And until we answer that question resoundingly, we ain't moving. We're stuck. We're in quicksand. And also when I left this discussion of last week, I look at least 3 areas that should be our major preoccupation now. And we're not debating any of those 3. We're still on the question of identity. And the first one is that as we sit here, bombs is raining all over the Horn of Africa and our ancient motherland civilization, Ethiopia. And it's because brothers and sisters cannot resolve differences by talking and reasoning with each other. They have to resort to bombs that will put us in a crippling position, devastation, great suffering, and for us to pay money to buy more guns and more bombs to kill each other. Because all the wars in Africa that we've been fighting for hundreds of years, we haven't fought decisively to push out and to stop any invaders coming in. Those have been wars amongst ourselves. And we have to ask ourselves, how the hell we get into that situation? Where is mediation? Where is talking to each other? As we speak, we have a food crisis situation in Africa because those of us who go and train in European institutions abroad have come back to represent foreign interests that says we cannot continue to use our original seeds. We have to now have hybrid seeds that will be sold to us with fertilizer and other chemical. And we ask ourselves the question, how the hell we sign up to this madness? Where we're helping and colonize ourselves. Because every people must be able to feed themselves. And we are bringing in hybrids that's going to put us in a crippling situation whereby we're dependent on our enemies for their poisonous seeds and their poisonous chemicals. And that's not what we're doing this evening. The other one is to do with this pandemic, this COVID-19, that some of us not even talking about. And it's one of the most deadliest assault that the entire global population faces, and us worse as African people, because the vaccine that's supposed to be the savior, we're not the one manufacturing it. And our enemies are in the business of promoting and providing these vaccines that to be rolled out to us. And how the hell do we know that there's not two bags of vaccine, one for them and one for us? And those of us who say, well, Papa, why you making up nice about this COVID-19? It's nothing to be alarmed about. This is a brother of mine who is now in Ghana, and before he could travel, he had to have his test, which he had to leave Wickham to come to a test center in London, pay for it. That's the only way he could get on the plane. And not too far, if we're careless enough to allow it to happen, we may find ourselves into a situation whereby no vaccine, you can't travel on a bus, you can't go into a workplace if you have a job. And people say, oh, well, if it comes to that, I will leave. Those of us who have some connection with Africa direct as a citizen and the Caribbean, you're going to walk because you're not going to get on any plane. And don't tell me that we're so creative, we're going to make our own plane, have our own airport.
The only thing Pepper Kai was throwing right off the topic.
I'm coming, brother talk. So let us come to this point of who is an African. And I'm glad Brother Cecil have so eloquently put the case. So the work for myself is much lighter. One of the things I didn't say about what I do, for the 50 years or so, I've been involved with a great passion to ensure that books written by our people and also books written about us get distributed amongst us. And I have a book in my hand. The title is Being Black, Being Human. I always want to read this book but never get to read it. And I hope I'll make the time to read it. But I love the title. Being Black, Being Human. We're not black by accident. We're black by design of nature. And I totally disagree with Brother Mandingo when he said there's no black people and there's no white. I agree with him that the people who call themselves white, they're not white. You could call them pink or somewhere around there, but they're definitely not white. But I'm not going to waste time to convince them that they're not white. They choose white, and they may have chosen that because white is associated with purity, goodness, and blah, blah, blah. And they want to put themselves at a high pedestal. So I won't waste time to educate them. But there is no fiction about African people being black as color black. I've seen blacks, African, with my own eyes, and I'm no colorblind. and they are blue black. Now, Benjamin was right. The grade of color amongst us black is varied. And in fact, I will confess here and now that I love and I'm passionate about the color black. And probably because I'm the lighter shade of black. And I may be frightened of actually missing the boat. And because I didn't miss the boat, I'm glad. And therefore, to me, blackness is to be celebrated, is to be appreciated, because Brother Cecil said that we're all human, and I have a little problem with that, not with Brother Cecil, with the term, because although I don't claim to have the mythology of words, human, the word "you" means color, and therefore, the more you have, the more color you have, the blacker you is. So the thing about human coming from blackness, coming from man of you, coming from color. So really, in the 60s, we fight hard and we struggle hard because blackness come under vicious attack. And to defend our humanity, to defend our blackness, to defend our Africanness, we had to wage a struggle to the point that we see black as being beautiful and we make no apology. In fact, the only question we should ask ourselves is why are we so blessed? Because we the people, blacker than blue, in color, in the deepest of color, have the beauty of all its wide varieties. And blackness is not a curse. It's a great blessing. It's a great wealth. Because we know so little about the value of melanin. Because I believe, I don't have a scientific argument to put, but I do believe that this blackness, this melanin, this great substance goes much deeper than skin color. It's about what makes us human. Because I don't know a lot of history, but of all the things that I've seen, of all the people that on planet Earth, we the black people, we Africans, are the most humane. And in fact, this great humanity that we have work against us. But even as it worked against us, we should never want to give it up, because it is good to be good. And not because others are bad. We the good must find a way to subdue the bad without becoming bad ourselves. And when you look at what we have suffered at the hands of others, and yet we're not fearful, we're not hateful, we're not grudgeful, we must ask a question: what manner of people are we to have suffered so much, to have endured so much, and yet have not become wicked and evil? and I don't have the scientific measurement, but I'll put a blind bet and I will research the evidence later that the reason for it is to do with our blackness. And I disagree with anyone who said that to identify yourself as black will bring confusion. It's no confusion. It's a different side of the same coin. African, that is a country, that is the landmass from which we come. We could decide to change that tomorrow and call it a different name. In fact, some people call it a cable and various names. And that will also be up for debate. But one thing cannot be up for debate, or blackness, because we're black in color and in substance. And that substance is our humanity. And nobody can challenge that reality, because this blackness of skin goes deeper, much deeper than our skin color. It's what makes us who we are. It's what makes us human. I will stop there for now.
Okay, all right. So we have heard from all the... Not sure where this echo is coming from. Or could everybody mute their mics?
Oh, let's talk.
For me.
Let's do it one at a time and see. I'm giving like a pause. So I'll go first.
Okay. Yeah, I think that solved it. Yeah, that seemed to have solved it. Okay, so we've heard from all three presenters. And now I'm looking for questions and comments to come in from all those who are viewing this discussion today. Before we go on, it's always good to have a definition. No, this is not my definition. This is a definition that if most people go to a dictionary, they will find in terms of identity. And it says identity is referred to as the condition or character that distinguishes a person or thing. Now that's coming directly from the dictionary. Now, the next thing is, yes, a lot of people would say, I've heard what you all have to say, but there's still a bit of confusion I'm having. Because if we look back in the 1920s, the term Negro was the popular term at the time. And people accepted that. Coming up to the 30s, we had the word colored being used. In fact, still in existence is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Why do you think they refused to change that name, considering the times we are living in? We had right here in London in the 30s, doctor by the name of Harold Moody, who ran an organization called the League of Colored Peoples. So we can see as we're progressing through time, colors and terms begins to change. And then, of course, in the 1960s, during the Black Power movement, we had the term Afro being used quite a lot. And then we were told that in 1980, credited to Jesse Jackson when he came out with the term African American. But again, I've looked up something, and according, again, I'm saying, this is according to the Oxford Dictionary. And they are saying that the first use of the term African American is as far back as 1835. And the first use of the term Afro-American, say for instance, is as far back as 1831. So what do we really learn from that? So in moving forward now, I'd like somebody to take this up, because here we are saying, Mandingo is saying we're not blacks because we're not a color in that sense. And others are saying, yes, we are black. Okay, going on that basis, let's follow that logic now and go on that logic. Africans are black. Europeans are white. We were told at one point Chinese are yellow, but how many people now use the term yellow in relation to Chinese? How many people now use the term red in relation to the Native Americans? You know, so that's in terms of that. And I've got some few other things, but I'd like you to address those things first. In terms of in Garvey's day, the word Negro was comfortably being used, and people were comfortable with that.
Let me say,
and then the word colored came in, and now we know that's very derogatory. For example, the chairman of the FA recently had to resign because of the use of the word colored in relation to somebody. He had to step down. So I just like you to dwell around that point before some other points.
Yes, I want to say this.
Mm-hmm.
I utterly disagree with what Pepokai said in terms of black and African. And who have been listening know why I utterly disagree. And this thing, shades of darkness, is different from being black. And where you're talking about the word Negro, Tahaka, being acceptable in Garvey's time, and then later on, after you said colored was okay, that's actually wrong, because the NAACP was founded in 1909 before Marcus Garvey's UNIA and ACL, which was founded in 1914. So the NAACP had in the word colored, Du Bois and others, because they had mental self-hatred whereby they didn't want to use the word African, and they also, because of the mental slavery, thought that the word black or Negro, which is a Spanish word for black, was negative. And I am saying on record again, as I have done throughout the years, is that black is, for me, a positive term. So I don't want anyone to try any form of chicanery to think that I am against the color black per se, because I always use the color black in a positive sense. Hence, I don't accept terms like so-called blackmail, a black this and a black that, used in a negative sense. I always use the term black in a positive sense, always. And I, by the same token, I do not use the term white in any positive sense, like a white wedding and a white this and meaning, because that's a European thing, right? Whereby they say that anything white is ideal, that's good. I don't use the term white to indicate something which is good or something which is positive. And I always use the term black in a positive sense. That is quite different from my identity as an African. And as I have said, we have various shades of darkness to be African. And the most distinctive thing is the woolly hair that we as Africans have. Because as I have said, you have some dark Indians, very, very dark, but they are not African. So being African involves our phenotype in terms of our hair and our various shades of dark complexion. And Pepekai was saying that, yeah, he doesn't know about, you know, the scientific thing about melanin and so on. Well, I studied biology and chemistry at school, right? Those were some of my subjects. Melanin is simply dark coloring matter. And it has various shades. That is what melanin is. And it's coming from a Greek word. That's all it is. Melanin doesn't literally mean black. It's just dark coloring. Dark coloring. And as a matter of fact, every human being, and the word for human, hue means color or shade. Every human being has some form of melanin. Every human being. Even the Europeans who falsely call themselves white. The difference is that there are various degrees of melanin in each human being. That's it for now on that.
So would anybody else like to come in now? Come back?
Okay, I completely agree with the last point that our brother Mandingo made about melanin. It's true that everybody has some, and it's clearly true that us Africans have most. That one point. I'm genuinely not clear why our brother Mandingo is expressing a preference for darkness over blackness. Let us agree that, strictly speaking, there are no black, as in the sense of crayon black, and there are no white people, as in the sense of, you know, wherever you get the white from. Right. Let's agree on that. He says that that's a scientific proposition, and as it happens, it's so trivial a point that it doesn't actually turn up in the scientific literature at all. Nobody in the period since UNESCO picked up this argument about whether race is a reality or not, nobody has bothered to make that point, because the use of color when related to humankind is not about what he's calling literal blackness or literal whiteness. So no scientific point arises from that. Let me also say that I don't understand either why he's saying that only the hair type is the definer. In the literature, the position is that the distinguishing feature amongst the races include skin color, eye color, hair type, facial features and structure, and body type and limb length, and all whole heap of that. That it's in that assemblage that we have the differences between the different racial groups within Homo sapiens sapiens, with one species but divided in those ways. Nor do I quite understand why Brother Mandingo is actually saying that the Black Indians are not African. It is true that they are not in Africa, but there is a literature, and it's reputable literature, which talks about hither and thither Ethiopia, which regards continental Africa as one site of African dwelling, Africans now being called Ethiopians, and another site of African dwelling, which is all of that spread of South to Southeast Asia, including the Indian subcontinent. And the first population of the Indian subcontinent were us. And the people who first made the culture of ancient Hindustan were us. And then there was a migration into there, and that migration brought in Hinduism, which is a racist ideology celebrating whiteness. Inside of that, a black man called Siddhartha Gautama invented Buddhism, because he rejected the racist capture of his place by white people. And so it's true that no matter how black the Indians are, they tend not, people in the Indian subcontinent and going even further east, no matter how dark they are, they frequently and most frequently, more frequently than not, don't have hair like mine or like Brother Bandingo's and the other people on this platform. But we Africans have to understand who those people are. And we, in fact, have a cultural continuity with them. It is simply that a long time ago, they moved out of our continent and they went much further east than that. And they also went Australia, they also went out into the Indian Ocean islands, they also went out into the Philippines and Indonesia and so on. And the African fundament of the peopling of the earth and the cultural achievements that we have left massive records of, including all of the ancient temples of India, all of the physical representations in there, the statuary, the older ones are all people with our features and even our hair. So we need a deeper understanding of who the Indians are, or even the people in Cambodia and those places historically are, than is evident in this conversation. So there is no basis in my understanding of this matter. And because I knew that UNESCO and my colleagues in the universities were telling lies, I spent a whole heap of time looking at these issues. And I am clear that the basic that race matters, that race is a reality, that race doesn't just arise, that isn't what the whites in the post-war period called man's most dangerous myth, but a physical reality of humankind, and that color, not literal blackness or literal whiteness, but color is one of the fundamental elements of the distinction between me and the white man, and between us and white people, and between us and Chinese. And the rest of it includes, to repeat, skin color, eye color, hair type, facial structure and features, body stature, limb length, and all of that. It's that cluster of things, and you can't just pick out hair type and say that that's the only fundament, because as it happens, that's not true.
Let me say
sorry. Let me. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm happy to.
First of all, Cecil,
Mm-hmm.
you said something which was totally wrong. I did not say that here was the only thing. I said it's one of the most distinct thing. I mentioned that we have different shades. There are different features within different races. I never said that our here was the sole determinant. I said that's one of the most unique, distinct things about us. That's what I said. So you're wrong to be saying, as if I'm saying that it's my description for being African is only about here. It's not, because I also said that we have different shades of darkness, which is different color variations.
Yeah. So color matters. And once we
of course,
agree,
because I said that.
no,
right
we don't disagree about everything, my brother, and I'm not trying to pick a fight with you, so that's all right. My problem with what you're saying is that too much in your position depends on what you call literal blackness and literal whiteness. And nothing in the argument actually turns on that. It's not in the scientific literature because it's not an important point.
It is not, hold on. You're saying it is not important to you, but it is a scientific point that no one is literally black or white in color. That's a scientific fact.
It's such a trivial.
That's a scientific fact.
No, with respect, my brother, it's such a trivial point that is why, with respect, that is why it is not in the literature. Because everybody can see that when we say black, we don't mean literal blackness, and when we say white, we don't mean literal whiteness, and when we say yellow, we don't mean literal yellow. And yet, we're talking using color terms, and we're using them meaningfully. And blackness is one of the color terms that we use meaningfully, and it's a little bit flexible and a little bit sliding, but you don't gain anything by substituting darkness for it, and in fact you lose quite a lot by substituting darkness for it. So I believe that our blackness is a fundamental part, including the shades within blackness, is a fundamental part of our being African.
Well, I totally disagree with you.
And
it's not a trivial point how much you want it to be trivial.
Yeah, and I want to just make one other point. And this doesn't relate. This is not against anybody, but in our history here in the UK, in the late 60s, after Garvey, when all the nationalists and the leftists and the black nationalists got together, the organization they formed was actually called the Universal Colored People's Association. That's what all of the BUFP and BLF and all of them, the leaders of those, came out of. It was actually called the UCPA, Universal Colored People Association, right here in London, late 60s.
Well, that's them. I am no colored people. I am an African.
No. I'm not.
All right. Hold on. I think we're getting a bit.
No, I'm not defending the notion colored.
All right, we're losing ourselves a bit.
It's really quite recent, and like you, look, I'm an African. So the argument is about.
Mandingo says so. We're doing what we said we wouldn't do. It's not about us. We're just talking to ourselves. We're talking to the audience out there. Yes.
So it's not about
no, we know that. Hold on, man. People are listening, yes, but at the same time, I don't think we're getting anywhere with to and from. So what we really said, I'd like to bring Elder Pepper Kai now to hear his take on it.
So that I'm clear on the issue of melanin, as Brother Mandingo and Brother Ancestral concur, everybody have it, but we have the most of it. So if I didn't make that clear earlier, that's exactly what I'm saying. Now, Mandingo talks about hair type. Do we know that in Ethiopia today you have African black people with straight hair, and those same type of hair type you also find it in ancient Kemet, because it is true that Kemet is a daughter of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of the oldest African civilization we know. And Ethiopia was not just a country, but an empire. And that empire stretched as far into what is today called India, as Brother Ancestral reminds us. Because there was no water to cross that whole land bridge. The place they call the Middle East. And there's a country to call it the Middle East, to separate it away from Africa. That is Northeast Africa. And Europe and the Arabs call it the Middle East. And I want to go back to the point that Brother Cecil make, that the people that we call Indian, the people that were there before, is Africans from Ethiopia who other people from outside come into contact with and dominate that region. And this thing about literal color type, I don't know where Brother Mandingo and Brother Cecil are, but in my 70th years of life on this planet, I've seen African with jet black skin. And if you get the crayon, the black crayon, out of a box and mark it, it is exactly the same.
I have seen no such person.
Hold on. I don't know where you've been.
I don't know where you have been.
Hold on, man. Well, no. Hold on. Let's keep what is called a bit more civil. So says Pepper Kai is talking.
I'm not finished. I have seen, and in fact, there's a term that we commonly use, blue-black, black as blue. And that is a deep, deep, deep jet black color. And I'll get my camera out and there's pictures. These are not people's drawing. These are not artists' drawing. Pictures where people take camera and photograph, and that color is black. Now, the beauty about blackness is its variance. It moves from the deepest of black to the lightest, almost white. Because to be quite honest, when I see John J. Jackson, he was introduced to me by Brother Buchanan and John Henry Clark. I met him in Chicago. And when I look at him, I said, this man no black. Him almost white in color. But that you could say is by miscegenation because of slavery, why he come out that color. But if you go on the African continent today, depends on where you are, whether you're southern or wherever you are, the complexion of African varies. And it has nothing to do with us coming into sexual contact with white people and misgenerate. It's a question of climatic condition. But I stand firm that my eyes have behold dark, dark skinned African that is jet black in color. And I'm quite surprised that we're saying that such people does not exist.
Pepper Kai, you said
right.
blue black. And blue black is different from black.
It's in black.
Because that's an obvious contradiction. Black is different from blue black.
That's that. It's black.
All right. I want to move on. I want to bring up another point. Yeah. Now, as you know, many people have said life, the human race began in Africa. Yeah. Many books have been written, many programs have been made to say that. So if that is the case, when somebody turns around and says, well, if all life began in Africa, surely, no matter where you are, that makes you an African. Logically speaking, aren't they right?
With respect, no.
Right. Yeah, come through, Cecil. Come through.
And for this reason,
Yeah.
it is true that all Homo sapiens is one species. There's no doubt about that. Racial separation within that species is actually relatively recent. It's particularly produced by what Sheikh Anta Diop and other people who write about these things call the Rum glaciation, the last ice age in Europe. And the physical separation of human beings with the little, it only relates to less than 10% of our physical reality, but it's actually quite important. And the people who are the product of that physical change, who now call themselves white, are the result of a series of mutations arising in the ice ages of Europe. And when we talk about race, we're actually talking about the results of those differences. And nothing enables them to say that the shape and all of the other features that they now have entitle them to say that they're still African, because the differences that are physically visible are differences that now characterize a species that was once one and is now no longer one. And there are some who got transformed and got isolated and got wicked in Europe, and they are different from us. And it's a function of the last few 10,000 years.
Sister, I'm going to ask you this question.
Yes.
If Europeans nowadays take your position that you just said and said that because their ancestors came from Africa originally, they have a right to return to Africa and to settle and live there because their ancestors were Africans and they are Africans. What would you say to them?
I would say, one, that no current Europeans are making that claim or that point. The ones who are making the point about rights to Africanness are ones who got there in the last 400 years, who have been part of the structure of racist oppression, colonialism, neocolonialism, imperialism, all of the genocides and that to which they have subjected us. So it's modern Europeans who are making the claim. And no Europeans make the claim in relation to the fact that their ancestors tens and tens of thousands of years ago had a connection with us. And nobody in the white world is making any claims in relation to that I'm familiar with. And if they did, I would simply say, repeat what I just said to Brother Tahaka, which is that the differences that have defined the way in which whites have behaved are a product of what happened to them in Europe over the last maybe 20, not much more than that, 1,000 years. And what they've done since then in terms of declaring themselves to be superior, conquering and murdering and genociding everywhere they went, deprives them of any right to any reliance on the fact that they were once connected with us. And in terms of the reality of Homo sapiens, are still at a certain level connected, because the humanity is biogenetically one, and then within that oneness there are some differences, and those differences matter. And I, as an African, say that I'm different from those people whose wickedness we know historically. We've seen it in the Indian subcontinent, we've seen it worldwide, and just living here in the last few hundred years with them, we've seen it reconfirmed. We saw it in the Caribbean, the Native Americans saw it, the Aboriginals saw it, and so on. These are not people who can make any claims about being African, because before the last ice age, they were like us.
The reason why I'm saying that, why I put that, is because I personally, over the years, I've had some Europeans saying that to me. And I have known of other Africans who have said the same thing, that they have known of some Europeans making that claim.
Yeah.
That because their ancestors, according to this, what is called monogenesis, that there was one and then variations over time, that they are Africans, and so Africa belongs to them just like it belongs to us. This is why I'm saying that.
Yeah. I'm prepared to concede.
Not that I am agreeing. And
no, no, you don't. You can't possibly agree.
And one more point is this. There are two theories. There's the monogenesis theory, which you advance, that there was one, and then over time, climatic, the ice age and that type of thing, you had different types coming into play. But there's also what is known as the polygenesis, whereby there is a school of thought that there were different racial groups in different parts of planet Earth. So there's the monogenesis as opposed to the polygenesis.
Yes,
I'm
I'm familiar with that, and the polygenesis stuff tends to relate to pre-last ice age populations in the world, and not generally speaking to post-last ice age populations in the world. And the evidence is for one Homo sapiens. It's the evidence is genetic, it's linguistic, it's a whole heap of sciences produce the evidence confirming the initial oneness of Homo sapiens, and then the breaks and how the breaks arise is also, generally speaking, commonly agreed science.
Well, I'm positing, as you know, in science, there are opposing opinions where this is concerned, which is why I have put the fact that there is a school of polygenesis, which different races coming from different places on planet Earth, and there's also monogenesis, that out of one original race, quote unquote, different races emerge. So
I'm not.
Hold on, I think Elder Peppercorn wants to come in.
Yeah.
Yes. No. As I said, being black, being human, it may be that white people come out of us. Maybe. But in this amount of mutation, what has been lost needs to be properly examined. Also, the white people connection with Neanderthals needs to be examined. And based on those factors, no European can claim that Africa is their home, because they've left. If they came out of us, that Africanness went out of them.
Yes, I think that's. I think that's another version of the point I made. That it is. I don't deny Brother Mandingo's scientific statement that there are at least two theories about the origin of the population of the Earth.
Yes.
I do say that the polygenesis stuff tends to relate to pre-modern humanity populations, and that the monogenesis stuff is the scientifically accepted. I know the science is all European, but it's the scientifically accepted explanation for how planet Earth's current population came into being and spread. And several sciences, including biology, genetics, biogenetics, if you will, linguistics, and some other sciences, support that explanation for the nature of current humanity, the separation into the races, defined by the features that I mentioned earlier, not just hair, but all of those 5 or 6 other things, and so on.
Yeah, while others are oppose that, as I said.
All right. So I want to bring something else up.
Oh,
now,
sorry. With respect, there was one thing that I wanted to address. Your point about changes in the ways we have of naming ourselves. It's absolutely true that we've gone through many changes, and any people, A, who are oppressed, B, who don't necessarily know all of their history, who so our name, self-naming, naming by others, and so on, is a contested area, and those changes reflect that. Brother Mandingo and Brother Pepper are old enough to remember the contest we had around, you know, naming blackness and black is beautiful and all of those struggles and dashikas and all of that in the late
yes, because you and I and Pepper Kai are coming from that era.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 60s.
This is the changes of names reflect political contests around how identity is to be expressed and named and described. That's what that and it's nothing surprising. Incidentally, in my Caribbean history studies, I go in the 19th century and I find white people referring to ex-enslaved Caribbean Africans as displaced Africans. They have no doubt that they're Africans, right? And that's how they're describing our ancestors in the Caribbean. They know how they got there. They know that they put them there. So these descriptions of us in which African correctly appears is not just we do it, and it's not new.
No, what happened? It is not new, but the major thrust for Europeans not using and popularizing the term, which is indeed true for Africans outside of Africa who were transported because of enslavement, is because it's part of the divide and rule strategy to get Africans outside of Africa to deny their Africanness, because they know that if they are able to hold on to their African identity, this is dangerous for the Europeans, because they have always sought to erase any connection with Mother Africa, which is the reason why they went systematically about destroying our languages in the Caribbean and elsewhere, and separating Africans coming from specific groups, because they know that those were grounds for fostering unity and so on. So it was always their intention, which they did, to refer to our people in their legal systems as black or Negro. Well, if you're in the French territories, they would say blanc, etc. But they deliberately avoided the use of the term African, because they knew that it was a unifying term, and anything that sought to unify our people, religious and spiritual traditions also, were deliberately sabotaged and fought against.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. The other thing they did, and this is important, is that they spread stories about negative stories about Africa to us in the Caribbean and the New World, and negative stories and and vice versa. And in the conquest of Africa in the 19th and early 20th century, they used Caribbean Africans in their armies in West Africa and elsewhere. And so we need to understand that some continental Africans remember that, but whether they remember it or not is a fact. The British West India Regiment from
in Ghana, Ashanti War.
Yeah, exactly. So all of that history matters. and it's had effects.
Okay. All right. I want to bring up another point. Now, as part of the confusion, as we would say, we know that when the census come around, we get things pushed through our doors, and when we deal with the councils and our doctor's surgery, we are given a form. And on that form, it asks us to define what we are in terms of race. You know, I mean, if I remember right, the last time I looked at one, people coming from certain region are now known as Caribbean, I think. They stopped using the term West Indian a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're a Caribbean, or the term Black British is regularly used. So what would be your advice to people out there when they come across this? Because I tell you, the last time I came across one myself was in a doctor's surgery, and I said to her, I'm African. And we end up having an argument.
Yeah.
Because she's from Jamaica, and she said, why are you denying the fact that you're Jamaican? And she's not no African. And she refused to put African down for me. You know, so what would be all of your say advice to people faced with those kind of situations?
Well, sorry, my little response is that it really does depend on whether you want to cooperate with their processes or not. And if you don't, and you shouldn't necessarily, you can cross out what they put and write in African and hope that the computer can process it. It might very well not be able to. But I don't necessarily think that stuff matters more than so. Although
it does for
UK,
resources wise,
in the UK, race statistics, ethnic, if you like, statistics actually matter. So that's why I say you need to take a decision about whether you want to cooperate with their processes or not.
Where I am concerned, whenever such forms come about, I do not cooperate with the definitions of races, because no racist defines me. I am an African, and no one defines me. Listen, you have to make up your mind whether you want to bow or whether you want to stand your ground where your racial identity is concerned. There is no in between. It's like no one is a little bit pregnant. By the same token, you're either African or you're not African. I am an African, and there's no compromise where my African identity is concerned. For no one, at no time, irrespective.
My position is very clear, Brother Taka. As Mandingo said, definition is an African. But I'll go further. But Mandingo talks about European assault and African trying to divide us, which they have been doing. But they also Black command attack as well. Because a lot of people have seen Black being devalued in the dictionary, all the negative are put as Black. And they realize Black, African, same thing, attack both. So the question is, we must always be about standing firm, self-definition, and as Brother Mandingo said, stand your ground. We're African. Who's Black?
Well, I am African, simple, not Black.
All right.
Let's call it that. And it's not true scientifically.
All right.
I am African, and there's no compromise.
Yes, Mandingo, you made a point. So the next point is I don't know if I'm correct to say, since the film came out, Wakanda, that showed Africa in a positive light for the first time to many people. There have been many people who, before that, let me cut out this echo, Before that, many people who were very reluctant to associate themselves or have anything to do with Africa has suddenly stepped forward and now are happily prepared to call themselves Africans. And in a few cases, there have been situations where, you know, people like from the Caribbean are now going around or gone to Africa itself and say, I am an African, and they've been met with situations where they've been told, no, you're not.
I want to say something weird that is...
Hold on. Yeah, I'm just building up to ask to then let it out for you to answer. So, how would you remedy a situation like that? I mean, how would you approach a situation like that? Because what we forget, not say forget us, but in general, while we were being worked on in the West, slavery and having our names ripped away from us and so forth, and we were being worked on. Remember, Africa was also colonized, and especially the coastal area of Africa, it is common to find many people with European names. You know, maybe Ghana, Nigeria, so forth. You'll find many of them carrying European names who never left the continent. So again, I'm just throwing that into the mix. And how would you address a situation like that?
Let me say this. First of all, it's not just on the coast that European names are there to. In the interior, European names are also there. So it's not a coast thing. It's all over wherever the Europeans went that they impose their system. So it's not any, you have to get rid of that thing about any coast thing. It's wherever they went, they impose their ideology and so on. And it is natural and to be expected that you will find some Africans in Africa telling Africans from abroad, whether the Caribbean, Britain, the US, or Canada, saying that they are not African. Why? Because they have been miseducated by the racists. So they have also been the victims of miseducation, which is designed to benefit who? To benefit the Europeans. So the remedy for that, and the only remedy for that, is that Africans from outside of Mother Africa who come across some Africans, because one must not generalize, because you have a lot of Africans in Mother Africa who know that we are all Africans. So you have to deal with the ones who have been miseducated, who are still suffering from that racist miseducation. It has to be a process of education to explain to them why they are wrong to say that Africans from the diaspora are not Africans. It's a process of education. Okay. The mind, the battle for the mind, is the most important thing in our African struggle. Without winning the minds of our people, victory is not guaranteed. And we must be sensible and realistic to know that no matter what, you will always have some Africans, whether they are in the motherland or outside the motherland, who are mentally enslaved and work in the interest of the racists. You will never get away from that. The important thing is to have Africans who are mentally emancipated, working together, whether we are abroad or in Mother Africa, but working together so that we have the upper hand and the determining hand in what takes place. So it's a battle between us and those who have been mentally miseducated, because the neo-colonial system that the Europeans have imposed operates by using such Africans who have been mentally miseducated.
All right. So let's try, because time is running. So Anybody else on that point? Because I've got
Yes,
one more
I
point to
think-
bring up after this.
Yeah. Sorry, I think that this matters, and the fact that Africa, continental Africa, was never one. It had common culture, but never one juridical entity. Unlike one state, unlike China or India, actually matters. Something else matters. Africa is divided into 50-odd countries. It matters that none of those countries recognizes, unlike Greece or India or China, the right of those who were taken out to return to the motherland. It's not recognized. And that's because even though they are now talking about fifth or sixth region, the truth of the matter is that that's just at the level of African Union declaration. The declaration that we are the fifth or sixth region hasn't been ratified by the AU, despite having passed it, and no single African country, continental African country, has ratified it either. So it's up there in the air. We think it's been being followed up, but it's not actually followed up. And so the issue of the recognition of our rights as Africans on continental Africa is a big problem that has to be addressed by African governments, by the AU, and insofar as they've addressed it, they just have this declaration which they've not followed up and not ratified. And that's a big part of the problem. But there's other little problems. In the 1960s, I was working in an office. There's a brother from sitting across the desk from me, somebody from Nigeria, and he says, "What does it feel like to be the descendant of slaves?" This is in an office in London in the 1960s. So people, Africans, continental Africans, have a whole heap of negative ideas as along the lines that Brother Manding and I were saying earlier. But we Caribbean people have also a whole set of negative ideas. So it's kind of difficult. And then something else. When I went to the 8th Pan-African Congress in South Africa about 2 years ago now, there was a sister from the United States of America who was trying to get a declaration from the Congress that diaspora and Africans return were somehow special. And I said, no, it can't work like that. We can't move to inscribe that as some kind of special status. What we have to do is get continental Africa to face up to the fact that over 500 years, millions of us were taken out, and that we've multiplied into further millions, and that we have a right of return home, and the implications and meanings and problems of that have to be worked out. And we're nowhere near working that out. The African countries, for example, that talk about diaspora, they don't mean us. They mean their citizens who've left there in the last 40 or 50 or 30 years, and they have good relations with them. They have desks, they have things relating to them, nothing relating to us.
That's true. Yeah. Elder Pepperkai, you want to, before I ask the final point?
Not hearing him.
All right. Yeah, go on. Oh,
No,
you're
he's
still you're still muted. I'm trying to unmute him. Now you got to unmute. Yeah, that's it.
Where's your other point? And I'll come in.
Okay, the final point was, okay, we start off by talking about identity. And part of the problem, it seems to me, with identity is what happened to us, say, when we was taken out of Africa. And one of the most major things that happened to us was the taking of our names. Now, my question is, do you think by Africans in the diaspora, and by that I mean the old diaspora that carries all these slavers' name, do you think by jettisoning those names and reclaiming our African name will be a great step forward in us and Africans in general in the diaspora, in the older diaspora, coming to the realization of what they truly are, which is an African?
Nataka, I begin by saying, dogs and slaves are named by their masters. Free men and women name themselves. Part of our liberation, part of our emancipation, that we have to get rid of this slave label that's been imposed on us and take on our own names. That may not satisfy our brothers and sisters on the continent because of their enslavement mentally, but we have a duty and responsibility to reconnect, to rebuild ourselves. And part of that reconnection and that rebuilding is renaming ourselves. We're African. We're not Chinese. We're not Europeans. We're Africans. And as Africans, we must carry our African names. And we mustn't make excuse to say that if we get rid of our slave name, we disconnect from our culture, we disconnect from our history and our lineage. Because when the European forcibly remove all African names, when we're forcibly taken out of Africa, we survive, we connect. So we have to find ways and mechanisms to keep our family lineage, our family history, our family connection together, but we must get rid of this imposition of a foreign name.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? Mandingo, Cecil? Yeah, Brother Mandingo?
I missed a part of what you were saying. So in a nutshell, what was it?
I was saying, in terms of part of our reclaiming identity, isn't part of our reclaiming our identity by reclaiming our names? Because when we was taken out of the continent, one of the first things that was done to us was for us, they got us to relinquish our names, and we were renamed with their names, which have created massive confusion ever since. Mm-hmm. So surely by getting back, as part of reclaiming our identity is reclaiming our names.
Yes,
African names.
Of course. It goes without saying that the use of African names by ourselves to get rid of these European names that were imposed on us is absolutely important. And also, as I have said on this platform and elsewhere before, we should also endeavor to learn to speak African languages like Kiswahili, Yoruba, Igbo, etc. I'm very glad that on my mother's side, my grandmother's cousin Amy Ashwood Garvey in about the 1940s went and reunited with our African family from Joaben in the land of the Akan. That's the land of the Ashanti and Fanti. Joaben was a state in Akan land. So that direct family connection, fortunately, was done by Amy Ashwood Garvey, my cousin. And there are also other kids. As a matter of fact, Alexieli's Roots, which was fictional, but the real roots in terms of tracing literally was done by Amy Ashwood Garvey. And there have been other Africans who where their ancestors came from, who have been able to reconnect. But even if the majority of our people are not able to reconnect directly to a particular area or region, we are Africans. So whatever African name or we choose to use will satisfy. The important thing is that we rehabilitate ourselves by reclaiming our African culture and dignity and sense of identity. And we do this because it can be done. The only way it's not done is that you're not of the will, you're not of the mind to do so. Of course, there will be some Africans outside who continue to deny and reject their African identity because of how hardened they have been by mental slavery. But enough of us are around to make that crucial difference. And I always remind our people that not all of our people, whether in Africa or outside of Africa, are on the page of African unity and progress. Some are enemies, the internal enemies. And so it's a constant war with such individuals, with such groups. So we who are Pan-Africanists have to do what we have to do and work with our African brothers and sisters in the diaspora and in the motherland. That is the most important thing. Because right now, as we speak, no head of state in Africa operates in the interests of Pan-Africanism. All of them are neo-colonial puppets. Every one of them. The only one that you had recently was President Mugabe, and he was overthrown. He was, notice, he was the only African president who openly criticized and exposed the racism of the Europeans. No other African president or prime minister came out in clear language in terms of denouncing the European racist imperialists. This is a fact. And it is by design that any African in any of the African countries who show signs of Pan-Africanism, they are always attacked by the European media. And you can always know the traitors. The traitors are always praised by the European media. And the Pan-Africanists are always character assassinated and also assassinated by the Europeans. Case in point, Azania, Brother Malema, they have all kind of negative things about Malema. Why? Because he does not dance to their European neo-colonial tune. So we know who we must support and we know who we must fight against, because we are waging a war on two fronts simultaneously. The internal enemies who exist within the African race, in the diaspora and in the continent, and our external enemies who are in Africa and also in the diaspora.
All right. So running out of time. So finally, Elder Cecil, and then I'll hand over to Ndugramani to close this session for us.
I don't wish to add very much. Obviously, we're all committed to our African identity. There's a minor argument, some might think it's a big one, about the status of the the word black and the notion black, but I think that there is strong commitment to defending our African identity and to advancing our African interests, and that's fine. That's as it should be.
Okay, so again, we've come to the end. So I'd like to thank all the speakers again for taking part in today's event, today's session, and making it truly educational. Because as long as I've been involved in the Pan-African Congress movement, and I still learn. I've learned quite a lot today, and I've still learned. So if I've learned, I'm sure a lot of the viewers looking in, I hope you have learned something, and I hope this have made a difference to you. And this is one of the things that the Pan-African Congress movement do. We, as far as we're concerned, it's our duty to help to, I would say, get information out there to our community. I won't use the word educate because sometimes people might take exception to that, but it will put the information out there, and at least those who didn't have it before have a chance now to have it and go away and scrutinize it and build on it. And I hope it will make a difference. You know, so that is one of the aims of the Pan-African Congress movement. Just before I pass over to Ndugu Amani, another thing what the PACM does every year, we celebrate the festival of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa being the festival started in 1966 by Dr. Maulana Kuranga. Again, an Afrocentric approach to our African identity. And through Kwanzaa, it teaches us, because remember, Kuranga himself is from the old diaspora living in the United States. So he wanted some kind of event that could, one, take our focus of this pagan festival of Christmas, and two, help to educate us in terms of our African culture. So that's something that we're working on. So that's something to look forward to. It will be held on December the 26th. That's Emojo Day. That's the first day of Kwanzaa. And that's something that the PACM London branch has been doing now, I think, well, for over 30 years. We have been holding Kwanzaa on Emojo Day. Unfortunately, due to the crisis of this COVID, we are unable to hold it in an open venue like we used to at African Caribbean Culture Center. So it will be held virtually on a platform like this. So just keep an eye out for the information as we put it out. So now I'd like to pass over to Ndugu Amani, who will close this session for us by changing the energy.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Asante sana wazee and asante sana baba. So I think Taka said everything that needs to be said. We're closing our ceremony, and I do apologize because I missed out something very important when I began, and that was to ask the elders if I may continue. So I correct myself now. Elders, may I continue with ending the ritual?
Yes, indeed.
Asante sana. And we use Kiswahili as a revolutionary Pan-Africanist organization because at the 6th Pan-African Congress, they said that when there is a United States of Africa or something of that entity, that we should use Kiswahili as the lingua franca, as the language of commerce, of education, of unity throughout the diaspora and in the continent of Africa, and not disregarding or disrespecting any other language or culture or ethnic group, but to use it as a useful term and a useful means of unity, and so that's why we use it in the Pan-African Congress movement. So, to end the ritual, I am now going to share the screen. Okay, and good. You should be able to see that. To put it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, beautiful. Right, so I'm now going to ring the chime 6 times, in order again to stimulate the energy, stimulate the vibration, and that we should be concentrating on and meditating upon the gratitude and appreciation for the universal consciousness, Wote, the all that is within us, that we called upon, the ancestors, or Mababu in Kiswahili, and the principles and powers, Kanuni na Nguvu, that we called upon to come into our realm and assist us with our intentions, assist us with the conversations we've had today, and then take those intentions back to their own realm so that they can assist us to manifest our objectives. And it's most important that we have the intention, because intention is the will. Haru is the will to bring things into being. We have the intention and they assist us. Any objective must have an action, must have commitment to it. So that's what we should be doing as we're listening to the chime. We allow the chime vibration to go around us, through us, and over us, and thereby creating that change of energy, of unifying us, and also in one accord, leaving each other's presence now, but also having a fellowship and love for our fellow Africans, wherever they may be. So I'll ring the chime. I'll count in Swahili to keep time. I'll do it 6 times, and 6 because is the spiritual number for home, service, and family. And as we was talking about identity, the spirit told me that seemed very a good vibration that we should be using to end this session. So I'll begin. If you wish to take part, please do. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. If you do, eyes closed, sit straight, back straight, 7 energy centers in line, hands on your thighs and feet flat on the floor, and breathe deeply. I'll begin. Moja. Mbili. Tatu. Nne. Tano. Sita. And again, we end on the words of power and affirmation on the screen. And so you can just repeat after me in Kiswahili. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu wetu.
Na mapenzi ya wote.
Na mapenzi ya wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
All power to our people, and the will of the all is our will. Asanteni sana jamaa. Thank you.
Okay, asante sana Ndugwemani for that. And again, I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in today, and we'll be back again next week, same time on PACMTV with another interesting dynamic discussion. So until then, I bid you Kwaheri.